Okay. All right. So, folks, we are here on our first Tuesday in April. As we wait for a couple people to join, I'm going to go ahead and just remind everybody out there listening that the call for proposals is open for our upcoming CAGT conference in October. So please feel free to go to cogifted.org and go to conference and check out call for proposals if you're interested in submitting a proposal. We are eagerly recruiting people to submit their proposals for our conference coming up later this fall. So check that out. We are going to begin tonight with soon to be almost Dr. Gail Bentley. And let me. Sorry, I have having some feedback there for a second. Soon to be almost Dr. Gail Bentley and Dr. Lynn Lim. They are both affiliated with Bridges Graduate School of Cognitive Diversity, and they are both board members for SANG. So they're busy people, and they've just been busy writing a book, just filling their time. They're going to talk to us tonight about the social emotional needs of gifted kiddos and exploring those social emotional topics through picture books. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to the both of you. You can share your screen and take it away. We are just eager to hear what you have to share tonight.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention something special that we talked about. I had a note and a little asterisk and everything on it. If you are watching tonight, and I'll put this in the chat as well, if you're watching tonight, if you would please comment where you're watching from, leave a sweet comment about a picture book that you love, or leave a question for Gail and Lynn, we will enter you into a drawing at the end of this presentation for a free copy of their book. So stay tuned and stick around until the end and see who wins.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much for having us. Just here's briefly our agenda. We'll introduce ourselves. We'll talk about the early benefits of reading, viewing our child as a whole person, helping children accept themselves and others. And then we talk a little bit about some books that mention perfectionism and anxiety in young children, or they deal with them. And then we will have time for questions and discussion. Lynn, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Glad to be back. I was on CAGT, I want to say maybe a couple years ago. It's always a pleasure to be here with everyone. I have an interdisciplinary background in human development, psychology in particular, and I'm really interested in our inner experiences and how we interact with our world. Through many different experiences, including being a parent of two gifted teenagers now. Gail and I have connected and really we're thinking about what are the things if we knew earlier as parents that would be really helpful to us. And that was one of the sort of inspiration on thinking about, we love reading, our kids love reading. In the classroom, there's always a reading time. So we're trying to think about ways for busy parents, busy teachers, busy lives. How could we sort of do double duty, on something we're already doing? And if we're not doing enough, we're hoping that would encourage you to really leverage reading time to, work on building better relationships and connections. Currently, I'm with Bridges Graduate School, and both Gail and I are also board members on SANG, Supporting Emotional Needs of the Gifted. So that's a topic. Social emotional areas are really, really important to us, and we would love to share our thoughts in the book with you today.
Thank you. And I think you might have been the first person to say almost Dr. Gail Bentley, so I'm super excited. we're down to like 4 or 5 weeks until I'm done, so I'm excited about that. But yes, I am at Bridges finishing my doctorate. And I went to get a doctorate. I've taught in the public schools for, I think this is my 24th year. I've lost track, and but I have 3 neurodivergent sons. I think between the 3 of them, we have 8 neurodivergencies. So when you have that much complexity in your household, you pretty much have to go get a doctorate so that you can fully, understand what you're supposed to be doing. But my children are similar to Lynn's, and so we kind of bond that way. Um, and then I'm also the founder of the Bentley Center, which is a place for resources for parents and children who are gifted in 2E. So moving on.
So
Do
most
you
of
want
us,
to start?
sure,
Do you want
most
to
of us are familiar with the academic benefits, so we're not gonna, talk too much. We're just flashing this up on there. I believe this is recorded, so feel free to go back. So what's really more interesting would be the next slide, Gail.
Yeah.
So
So,
on this, go ahead, Gail.
I'm sorry. I agree with Lynn completely. The academic benefits, we all kind of guess that your children are going to be better readers. They're going to do better in school. They're going to learn that habit. Those things are pretty obvious. But this, as Lynn said, this is more interesting, that when we're sitting with our child, reading with them, we're increasing that bond. And as we're bonding, I mean, that is an opportunity. When we're bonding with our child, all of these good things that you see on the screen are happening. Increased emotional awareness. And when kids are really little, particularly gifted kids, I would argue, and 2E kids, they have trouble regulating emotions sometimes. So when they get a lot of that regulation from us. It's almost like they borrow our regulation for a while. And so this is just an opportunity as they're sitting and connecting with us. Both the parent and the child shows a decrease in stress levels when you're sitting there reading together. Just that connection, that parental warmth and sensitivity, pro-social skills, and really, Lynn and I think a lot, because our children are the same age, we think about that adult-child connection, because when they're a teenager, you need to have had that connection with them when they're young in order to still be connected as a teenager. Like the time to do it is when they're young, and then you can use that to be bonded with them and to really help guide them when things get challenging, when they become teenagers. So really, reading is just a tool that we're arguing that we're all extremely busy. As Lynn said, let's leverage that time to work to build positive adult-child relationships. So when we're thinking about our child, and you all, since this is a gifted group, we know that these definitions, but Lynn and I both have 2E children. And it's a high ability student who has 1 or more disabilities. And so we want to help guide these children from a strength-based, talent-focused perspective. And as they say at Bridges, it ain't easy being green, from Kermit the Frog. That's our school motto. And so we really write this book from a strength-based, talent-focused perspective.
So on this slide are some of the quotes that we really like, and the emphasis is on the whole person on there. For example, today you are you. It is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. Another one that we really like is best gift anyone can give, I believe, is the gift of sharing ourselves. That's from Oprah. And the previous one was from Dr. Seuss. And our children are living, breathing human beings with their own characteristics and preferences, and they are apart from us. So they are their own unique human being. And each of us are the sum of us as a whole person is more than our parts. And we all have different areas of strengths and challenges.
And I think it's important as they get older to not just label them as that's my gifted child, or that's my athletic child, or that's my musical child. That's partly what we mean by the whole person, is looking at everything they're interested in, everything they're good at, and then realize that they have challenges as well. And I think we can all say nowadays, I would hope we can all say that we want our children to be accepting of other people. It seems like there are parts of the world where that's not going on, and politics and that sort of thing, but we want our children to be accepting of people who are different. And the research really supports the idea that they are going to be more likely to accept others if they accept themselves first. So that can start when they're very young. And so and the benefits of self-acceptance include higher life satisfaction and a greater sense of well-being. Well, who doesn't want that for their child? And so it's often dictated by how the adults around them feel about themselves. If we're sitting there looking in the mirror and nitpicking ourselves or what we're wearing or how much we weigh or whatever, what we're good at or what we're not good at, even young children will start to pick up on that. And so we just want to think about it. When you have a child who maybe who does find out that they have some challenges, I know, for instance, my son, when I was helping kind of talk through that he had ADHD, and then eventually we talked about that he had autism when he was maybe 9 or 10, we used Michael Phelps as a role model. Because my son was a swimmer. And so he really bonded with the idea of Michael Phelps. He watched all his races. We watched videos of his coach talking about if you are, nobody could have done the kind of training workout that Michael Phelps did without having ADHD. It was that hyper focus and that extra energy that got him through all of that. And so that really gave my son a lot of solace, and it showed that you really can use these challenges as gifts. And so that helped him a lot. So I think finding, famous role models and showing how they overcome things. And so, of course, there are lots of books about that.
The most interesting part here is are the books that Gail's gonna show little snippets of some of the books. We have in our book curated 42 picture books based off different themes as a starting point. So here are some, we're gonna start sharing little snippets of some of the books, and I think that's the most interesting part that we're really excited to share.
And I want to say a tip that I found out when we were writing our book, because I was looking at all these picture books and I was buying all these picture books, and they're all really expensive after a while, was if you go on YouTube and you write the name of the book, so like the one here, Read Aloud. And every book I looked for is online as a read aloud. And so it's free. So this is an opportunity when you're traveling, you now have a wealth of picture books. If you want to just look up a book to see if you think your child will like it, such a great way to check out books without buying the thousands of books that Lynn and I bought for our children. Some were awesome, some less awesome. So anyway, good little tip there. So I'm going to show you a little clip from this book called Red, which is about it's about a blue crayon wrapped in red paper, and he's told his whole young life that he's red, and he's asked to do all the things that red crayons should be able to do, and he can't do them, and he can't understand why. And I'll show you a couple of clips from this. And this is about accepting
He was red,
others.
but he wasn't very good at it. Oh dear. His teachers thought he needed more practice. I'll draw a red strawberry, then you draw a red strawberry. You can do this, really. But he couldn't, really. Like this? Oh my. Let's try again. His mother thought he needed to mix with other colors. Why don't you two go out and draw a nice round orange? A really big one. A really orange one. But they made a big greenish one. Yuck! Oops. His grandparents thought he wasn't warm enough. Your class is making self-portraits for Parents' Night. Wear this warm red scarf. Nice. It's so you. But it so wasn't. Oh, dear me. Everyone seemed to have something to say. Sometimes I wonder if he's really red at all. Don't be silly. It says red on his label. He came that way from the factory. Frankly, I don't think he's very bright. Well, I think he's lazy. Right. He's got to press harder. Really apply himself. Give him time. He'll catch on. Of course he will.
How many times do our children hear that in school? I mean, it's just such an amazing metaphor for really what kids go through. So he goes through a whole bunch of trials and tribulations where he's still continuing to be red, and then he meets a new friend.
Will you make a blue ocean for my boat? I can't. I'm red. Will you try? So he did. Thank you. It's perfect. You're welcome. It was easy. And he didn't stop there. Bluebells, blue jeans, blue bird, blueberries, blue whale. I'm blue. He was blue, and everyone was talking. My son is brilliant. Who could have known he was blue? I always said he was blue. It was obvious. His blue ocean really lifted me. All of his work makes me happy. His blue strawberries are my favorite. He's so intense. I'm going to make a green lizard with him, a really big one. I hear he's working on a huge new project. He's really reaching for the sky.
I think this book is just such an amazing example of working in your strengths. You know, we were trying to get him to do something he couldn't do, or he wasn't meant to do. And there's not a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old alive, I don't think, who wouldn't have looked at that crayon and said, that's not a red crayon, that's a blue crayon. It just has a red wrapping, but we as adults were looking at the wrapper. Oh, well, it was labeled red, so clearly. Anyway, I think that's such a great example for little ones. I won't show the video, but Egbert the slightly cracked egg is super cute, about an egg who lives with his friends in the refrigerator, and they all love him, and he's an artist, and he draws pictures in there, but all of a sudden they realize he's cracked. And because he's cracked, so now he's different, he's not allowed to live in the refrigerator anymore. So he goes and tries to find another place to live, and eventually, after a long journey, sees that there are cracks in nature, like in a canyon, or the sun coming through the clouds in the sky. And he realizes that being cracked is natural and beautiful, and he travels the world, and he sends postcards of all these cracks back to his friends in the refrigerator. So it's pretty cute too. So we've thought about helping children accept differences in themselves. Now we're ready to think about helping them see differences in others. We want to encourage our child to see the positive attributes of those who seem different and allow them to ask questions. And some of these picture books, the characters are asking, why is one leg shorter than the other? Or why does that person look different? Or why can't that child run the way that I can? And we want them to notice the differences and be able to ask about them to us. And then that's where we remind them that we all have strengths and challenges. Of course, we want to make sure that we're modeling tolerance and kindness because we're our children's, biggest role models. When a child notices somebody else is different, I think we can challenge them to find similarities with others. So yes, the child's sitting in a wheelchair, but what's similar between your child and that child? Do they both love to color? Do they both love to watch, or play video games, or whatever? And then I think, again, a lot of communities nowadays have gotten really good about this, but they hold multicultural festivals. You can start taking your children to those at a very young age where they can taste different food and they can see really cool dancers and art and hear music. That's an opportunity for them to learn about other cultures. And so we have some other recommendations in our book too along those lines. So I think this is Lynn and my favorite, the big umbrella. Thinking about acceptance, acceptance of others. And so you're going to see a big umbrella. I'll play this one for you guys. And it starts off as just a normal umbrella. It's raining outside and a little boy, I think, is carrying the umbrella. And it's what happens when others want to come under the umbrella.
It loves to give shelter. It loves to gather people in. It doesn't matter if you are tall or hairy or plaid. It doesn't matter how many legs you have. Some people worry that there won't be enough room under the big umbrella. But the amazing thing is, there is. There is always room. Let's remember there's always enough room under the umbrella and in our hearts for all.
I feel like you could have a whole discussion about this last picture with, you know, 2-pager, all the people look different, who are doing different things, different abilities and disabilities, different, you know, reactions, different outfits. Anyway, I think that's so, I feel like the red umbrella, the smile is so appealing that you just want to see this umbrella, but then seeing all the different people and animals going under the umbrella and using the umbrella like it has arms, like it's arms encircling. Anyway, just a wonderful example. And you see there are like 5 words on each page. So you can use a book like this with a little one, with like a 2-year-old. Moses Goes to a Concert. It's another really good book, and it talks about Moses, who is deaf, and then it's his class of deaf students, and they're actually going to see a deaf percussionist perform. She performs in her socks so she can feel the vibrations, but she's up on stage. And I believe it's Evelyn Glennie is a famous percussionist who solos who's deaf. And so it's the story is kind of about her and talks about all the instruments, and then it shows sign language throughout the book. And so I always have a little bit, when I read it with older kids, they're always really interested in the sign language and they want to try out all the signs and learn their name. And so that's another one to just talk about differences, but in a really cool, fun way. So perfectionism in young children. You guys probably know this, but gifted and 2E children can really be prone to this because they've been told that they're smart. I mean, or they can tell that they're smart, or they can tell that they know more than the kids around them, or that they've developed more quickly than those around them. And to them, that's, you know, being smart can equal high achievement or being perfect. I gave this presentation 3 times last week to parent groups of young children, like newborns to 2-year-olds. And I asked in every session, at least one parent told me they could tell that one of their children was becoming perfectionistic at the age of 2. So you really can see this. And I'd seen it before myself, but you really can see this sometimes in really young children. And Lynn and I both can tell you it's much easier to address it when they're 3, 4, 5 years old than when they're 15. And then you have school refusal, or they don't want to take their AP test, or, you know, when the stakes are much higher. So that's why we were looking at books where they're addressing perfectionism with these young children, like how beneficial that is to talk about it at that age. You know, we all know when things come very easily to children, even young children, they sometimes don't want to do anything harder. They'll refuse even at a young age, preferring that easy success because their self-worth is all wrapped up. And then we really want to model that idea of the growth mindset of it's okay to make mistakes. That's really important. I definitely did not feel like I was supposed to make mistakes when I was a child, and it is hard. It's hard to kind of overcome that. Luckily, none of my children are perfectionists, so they haven't copied me, that's for sure. But I actually did this with my children. I actually practiced making mistakes intentionally in front of my children, with my children, just so they could see when they started to get, you know, upset about something, we would do this intentionally, just in order to not get wrapped up. So, and then I love with older children, these research mistakes. Those are in our book that became famous inventions: penicillin, sticky notes, Velcro. Nobody was setting out to invent any of those three things. Those were mistakes that they realized had other uses. So just things like that are kind of fun for older kids. So some books that we love about making mistakes. We love Beautiful Oops, and it is a board book. And so you can get, I know when they're really little, you need board books because they tear the pages. But so Beautiful Oops is a board book. We talk about in the book that I've used it with a couple 6 and 7-year-olds who were literally they were 2E children, and they were literally paralyzed and would not do any art, any writing, anything like any production really, because they were so afraid of making a mistake. And the minute they started, if the line wasn't perfect or the paper got wrinkled or whatever, they balled it up and threw it away. And it was really causing a problem. And so we used Beautiful Oops, read it a number of times with them, and then it became a classroom thing of, oops, oh, it's a beautiful oops. And everybody just became much more lighthearted about it. And those children began producing because they could write, they could draw, they just were afraid to. So this will just give you an idea of what the book does.
Oops, a torn piece of paper is just the beginning. Every spill has lots and lots of possibilities. Bent paper is something to celebrate. A little drip of paint lets your imagination run wild.
So you get the idea, but it's really cute the way it's done. And those are real things. The bent paper, I've seen kids just refuse because the paper is bent. Like, those are real things. And so anyway, that's a really good one to use for that analysis paralysis that you can see with perfectionism sometimes. And then any books by Peter Reynolds, I was so impressed. We recommended several of them. The pictures are beautiful, the message is beautiful, but this is about a little boy who loved to paint. He painted all the time. And then one day his older brother insulted him in his painting. And after that, it just wasn't the same. And so actually, I'm going to show you a clip from this one because these are just delightful stories. Anything you find by Peter Reynolds is great and in this vein.
Leon's laughter haunted Ramon.
So that's the brother.
He kept trying to make his drawings look
The brother
right,
laughed at him.
but they never did. After many months and many crumpled sheets of paper, Ramon put his pencil down. I'm done. Marisol, his sister, was watching him. What do you want? He snapped. I was watching you draw, she said. Ramon sneered. I'm not drawing. Go away. Marisol ran away, but not before picking up a crumpled sheet of paper. Hey, come back here with that. Ramon raced after Marisol, up the hall and into her room. He was about to yell, but fell silent when he saw his sister's walls. He stared at the crumpled gallery. This is one of my favorites, Marisol said, pointing. That was supposed to be a vase of flowers, Ramon said, but it doesn't look like one. Well, it looks vase-ish, she exclaimed. Vase-ish? Ramon looked closer. Then he studied all the drawings on Marisol's walls and began to see them in a whole new way. They do look ish, he said. Ramon felt light and energized. Thinking ishly allowed his ideas to flow freely. He began to draw what he felt, loose lines, quickly springing out, without worry. Ramon once again drew and drew the world around him, making an ish drawing felt wonderful. He filled his journals, tree-ish, house-ish, boat-ish, afternoon-ish, fish-ish, sun-ish. Ramon realized he could draw ish feelings too. Peace-ish, silly-ish, excited-ish.
Wouldn't that be a great exercise in a first grade classroom, or a young classroom, or even preschool? Hey, let's do an ish drawing. That takes all the pressure off, right? It just has to look a little bit like that. That seems like it would be such a cool activity, but a great example of not worrying so much about perfectionism. Do you want to speak on anxiety, Lynn?
Sure. So for anxiety in young children, at some point we usually would worry. The thing would be when the worry is to such an extent that it's paralyzing you on that side. So we advocate on, kind of paying attention in terms of noticing changes over time. If your child is usually a certain way, if there are any changes, to use that as a way to give you clues that, to have a conversation, have a dialogue with your child, to do that. And going through making sure things like, a lot of times we may just focus on, oh, my child is worried. It could be other things that are not directly at this moment that's leading up to it. For example, making sure, there's plenty of rest, eating well, we're getting plenty of exercises, things like that are something we can make sure to do in general on there. And also, making sure that we pick certain books that we can engage in this topic with them to really get maybe a sense of where they're coming from. What are their thoughts? What are they worried about? An example would be my son. I remember when he was young. I don't remember now how young he was. He's 16 now, so it feels like a very, very long time. One day, in the middle of the night, he came into our room and he couldn't sleep. It was, I don't know, it was probably like 2 or 3 in the morning. And he was really concerned. And he woke me up and I was like, what's going on? And he said, Mom, very serious. And he said, what if an alien landed in our garden? And he couldn't sleep because he was thinking about that. And obviously for him, it kept him up. And I was very exhausted at that point. And I said, is the alien here now? Like right now in our garden? And he said, no. He's like, what if, what if an alien comes and what are we going to do? And I said, okay, if the alien's not here, so making sure, is it a crisis? Is it is it something we need to deal with like in that moment, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning? He said, no, the alien's not there, but clearly he was concerned about it. I said, that's good. The alien's not here. I hear you. I think that's important conversation to have. Let's talk about it in the morning time, since the alien is not here in this moment, because this is the time where we need to be sleeping. And I don't recall what happened after that. But what I do recall was that if I had just said, hey, just go back to sleep, don't worry about it or anything like that, that night we probably would have ended up with like a melting child, the world's falling down or anything like that. So that was something, an incident that's really clear in my mind. And clearly he was very, very worried about it. The other one was one day out of blue, he said, Mom, we have a problem. I said, well, what's a problem? Santa can't come because we don't have a roof. we don't have a chimney, which we don't. So it's like, how's he gonna come? So anyway, that was another real thing that really bothered him, that, you know, it wasn't even on our radar on there. So how about Gail, the next page, see if we have something to share.
Yes. Oh, I love both of these. I have to share both. I
Okay,
love all, yeah, I'm
one.
like, oh, I'm so glad we did this project. I just love
I
these
would do
little,
the dragon one because of, remember, it was like an oldie. It doesn't mean
that's true.
it's you know,
Okay.
that some things could be timeless.
There you go. Oldie but goodie. Okay, there's no such thing as a dragon. A dragon is basically worry personified. And so this boy wakes up and there's a dragon that's the size of like a house cat in his room, and he's telling his mom, and his mom keeps saying, there's no such thing as a dragon. And so he ignores the dragon. And as he ignores the dragon gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The mom still continues to say there's no such thing as a dragon until it's so big that the dragon's carrying their house down the street. There's the house.
How did this happen? Mr. Bixby asked. It was the dragon, said Billy. There's no such thing, Mother started to say. There is a dragon, Billy insisted. A very big dragon. And Billy patted the dragon on the head. The dragon wagged its tail happily. Then, even faster than it had grown, the dragon started getting smaller. Soon, it was kitten size again. I don't mind dragons this size, said Mother. Why did it have to grow so big? I'm not sure, said Billy, but I think it just wanted to be noticed.
Out of the mouths of babes, right? The little boy realized that he needed to be noticed, but the adults around him didn't. But again, yeah, that's a book, I think, from the 70s, so an older book, but really a nice example of anxiety being personified as this cute dragon. So we come to the end of this portion. We've left time so that we can answer any questions or have any kind of discussion that might come up. This is the book that Lynn and I wrote together, using picture books to help little ones learn about themselves, where we've recommended 42 different books divided by topics, working in strengths, perfectionism, anxiety, those sorts of things. One of my former students did all the illustrations, and so that's special for me as a teacher. It is available on Amazon. The QR code here works. And I believe at the end, we're going to give one away to somebody living in the United States. We'll have it sent to you. So
yeah,
exciting.
And one of the other things in the book is that at the end of each chapter, we do like a little, I believe it's either 3 or 4 quick things, because a lot of times in the moment, it's difficult for parents to be like, wait, what did I read? You know, it's just so much. So we do have at the end of each chapter, a couple of strategies and suggestions for things you could do. And what we would recommend would be when things are calm, to really think about what would you do? How would you respond given what you know about your child on there? So that way, when you are, you know, in a situation, you could refer to things. So that's one of the reasons why we wrote this book, to really allow the during the calm times, how can we build our skills so that we're better prepared, and also be more proactive, so that, you know, we're building those skills to hopefully things don't get to that level.
Okay, well, thank you, ladies, for sharing. I have like some new books I want to look at and read. It brought me back. My kids are older too. They're one just turned 12 and the other's 15, almost 16. And it brought me back to some of the books that we read, you know, growing up. And some had, you know, like a deeper meaning, and some were like the mustache story, which is just a silly, goofy story. But, you know, when you talked at the beginning about like that bonding with your child over reading really early on. I mean, we still joke. My husband used to read the Mustache story, and I'm going to make fun of myself right now. I'm probably going to embarrass myself, but he would read this part and he would go, mustache. Ah, ha, ha, ha. And even to this day, she is 12 now. He used to read this to my daughter all the time, and she is 12 now. And anytime somebody has a crazy mustache, they both look at each other and go, mustache. It's just, but it's like it's this ongoing thing that they have that they've that's just a running joke in our family, but it's because of reading books when we were younger. And my son loved for me to read him books, and I'm sure he remembers probably some of them better than I do. But kind of I read to my son, and then my husband read to my daughter. So we have this interesting bond. And the thing is if we'd been maybe more intentional, because like you said, sometimes you pick up a book, it looks like it's going to be great, and then you read it and you're like,
Eh.
eh. And then you pick up some books and you're like, this looks weird, but that it's like amazing, and I feel like having your curated book that kind of curates some of these great good like social emotional texts that we can read to our kids is so important, because I think that bedtime moment that you have with the kids, or that like late afternoon moment, or early whenever you reread at bedtime, we climbed in bed with them, and as long as we could all squeeze in and read the book with them. But having those moments where you can talk about those things and kind of really reflect on what the story is saying to the kid, those are like, in TikTok's like core memories, right? Like that's a core memory those kids will have, and then we can keep, you reflect back on it. And if that core memory is about like persevering through perfectionism, or it's about like self-acceptance, or if it's about like dealing with anxiety and struggle, well, how much is that going to be ingrained in how they process problems when they're 12, 16, 25, So
Absolutely.
that's my big takeaway from today, was
Yeah.
that
I'll add that this book is about using picture books. Really, it's the picture book is a tool to really, right, fundamentally, the bigger thing is to find safe ways to create that positive relationship and the bond. And I think, Gail, do you want to share, it doesn't have to be only within the family. That could be something that a teacher could also
Oh,
play a
absolutely. A
role. I
lot of
think
these
that's also
books.
really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, I was going to say my 12-year-old who's profoundly gifted and has dyslexia, but he's read all the Wings of Fire novels. He's 12. He still wants me to read them to him. We've been reading for several years on these Wings of Fire books. I'm actually really into them now. But he's already read them. He only wants me to read to him for that nightly connection, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why else would he want me to still be reading to him? He doesn't need me to read to him. He reads just fine, and he reads on his own, and he's not getting new information. He wants to discuss the characters. He wants to discuss the powers they have, like he has a whole agenda of questions to ask me about them. And then he asks if I remember the characters from 2 novels earlier. And I'm like, no, I kind of don't. Sorry. So he likes to quiz me. So that's a gifted trait right there. But
Oh.
anyway, so it's okay if they're older. Whereas my older 2 boys, I stopped way before then. They didn't want to keep reading at that age. So, it's different with different kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Angela has commented a couple times today, and she mentioned a book at the very beginning. Angela mentioned a book called The Rabbit Listened. I think I'm scrolling back up in comments
I
trying to
think,
find that.
yeah, I don't think I put that in there, but I think I know that book. And it's
Yeah,
a really sweet book. Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with some animal books, like the
right.
personification when it's yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, you're talking about, we call them tricky topics. If it's a cute little bunny going through a tricky topic, everybody feels safe, right? I mean, we're talking about the bunny, but eventually, as you said, the message would become internalized, right? As
Yeah,
they get older.
absolutely. She also said her daughter's preschool uses the little spot books. And she's been able to, as even just a young child, put words to her feelings. that she feels
Mm,
confident or she feels loved. And that's not always vocabulary that it's not it doesn't seem to be like a prioritized vocabulary that we put out there for children. At least it wasn't, as my kids were really young, prioritizing the like emotional language for kids. It was like you need to prioritize academic language, academic language, academic language, but the prioritizing emotional language, as Angela is kind of sharing here, I feel like that those picture books would do that as well, like making sure we give name to the feeling the kids are having.
absolutely. Yeah, Angela brought up a great point. And I feel the same way. It did all feel like academics when my kids were little. I don't
Yeah,
remember a push back then.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
She said expanding on happy or sad, like just
yeah.
it's not just happy. There's different types of happy, and there's different types of sad. And being able to articulate that at a young age is really important because I know grown adults who can't articulate.
Yeah, exactly.
Very awesome. Very awesome.
Uh,
And then someone else commented that Dot
Yes,
is another.
that's That's the one. Remember the Ish book
Okay.
that was also written by
Peter
I think it's
Reynolds.
Peter Reynolds. Why do I keep saying
Okay.
sorry? Peter Reynolds. Yes, I'm telling you, every book that man has done is it's so cute. It's so on point. It's yeah. The Dot's great too.
That
I
is
think
awesome.
when we first thought of the project, I think Gail, the thought was to curate, I don't know, like 75 or like a lot more books. Then we decided that it would make more sense to start paring them down
Mhm.
first and be really to start with like a starter set of books.
Yes.
And then really, we're also trying to look for books that would allow more open type of dialogue, which is why we decided on picture books, than sort of something that's telling you a certain, like a certainty type of thing,
Hmm.
to really allow that as a way to get an insight into what our child is thinking, to have that opportunity to be like, oh, what do you think? And really seeking that openness so that we're not trying to direct the
Yeah.
patient a certain way, because really we want to know how, what's going on inside. And this is a good way, safe way to talk about really what's going on inside of a child that may be difficult to verbalize even, at a young age, but sort of through the books, through a medium to be able to maybe, kind of relate to it or say, oh, it's very different for me or something like that, and really have that conversation.
And I like kind of in your book, because you in the presentation you curated it by kind of like theme.
Yes,
And is your book, are they broken down into thematic?
yeah. Or I'll just read you the table of contents. Why is it so important that I read with my child? What if my child seems different? How do I bring out the best in my child? So that's the strength-based aspect.
Hmm.
How do I help my child accept themselves and accept others? How do I build empathy in my child? How do I calm my worried child? What if my child is a perfectionist? How do I view my child as a whole person?
That's
So
great.
it's all divide and it's fully research based,
Hmm.
so
And I love that you like what you said, Lynn, is that open-ended where you're not putting words into kids' mouths, because the authenticity of that process is so important to them retaining and understanding and processing the emotions and the understanding that you're getting at in through the reading, but to not just say, well, this book says, and has it, like right out there, making it explicit almost takes away from their processing and internalizing of the message. So I didn't really kind of think about that, but that makes a lot of sense. And those all were always the ones that really seem to kind of hit you in the heart more, that are just like implicit, they're underlying, and then the visuals are so important too, like in the big umbrella. So excellent.
yeah,
Um, somebody said Wombat Stew. I haven't heard of that one.
oh, I
It's a
don't know if
it's
I've
an
heard of it either.
it's an Aussie story.
Oh, cool.
I wonder if Kaz is from Australia.
So the other thing we're really interested in would be, we are talking with to get the book translated into different languages too.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Because I think that would be interesting, and the books may be different because culturally. So that's really
exactly.
also something that we're very interested to do, and sort of really use that as a way to just exchange, how different within different cultures, just to enrich all the conversation around meeting just human beings, end of the
Yeah,
day.
absolutely.
So that's, I think,
That could be a whole nother very large project.
Well, we actually today just got the Japanese version is starting. So they're
Awesome.
translating in Japanese, and then they're gonna use whatever books that are already translated that we recommended, and then they're
Mhm.
gonna find other Japanese picture books that fit the categories that we have. And so it'll match, it'll match the culture. And because there's very little gifted education in Japan,
Oh,
which
really?
shocked me. Yes, like
Hmm.
almost nothing. So
nothing in terms of like programming
like,
work. I
yeah,
guess,
like programming and teacher
and
training and that sort of thing. So
Huh. Very
yeah,
interesting.
I didn't realize that either. So
Well, you'd be happy to know that tonight we have someone from Brazil, Puerto Rico, and Malaysia join tonight. So
wow.
we have diverse, right? We have diverse viewers as well. So they would, I'm sure they appreciate hearing that you are expanding your research into diverse and multicultural perspectives. So that's great. It's really
yeah,
great.
please reach out to Gail. Do we have a slide that has our contact information?
Oh, I'm sure
We
we
could
do.
just flash that because we would love,
Sure.
I think it's important to really connect all of us across different spaces
Mhm.
to really I think that would really enrich everyone's life. So that's something of interest. And I grew up in Singapore, and I was just there last week for a class, for a course, visiting different companies, and it's just, you
There
know,
we go.
yeah, it's just really interesting, sort of growing up somewhere, left, came to the US, then going back again. Yeah, it's just amazing. So yeah, for any of the audience and attendees, if it's something of interest, we love to collaborate. I think that's always more interesting, right, Gail? Instead of like doing
Yep.
it ourselves, we get
Yep.
to bounce ideas off each other, and really, I think that's when magic happens. I like to think is when we all work
Absolutely.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got all kinds of projects going with all sorts of different people. So that absolutely would be a treat for us.
Sorry, I have to mute. My husband's phone is in the next room and it's a heinous ringtone.
Oh. um, are you ready? As soon as she's back, we can do our drawing. And if you stay on and give your address, to CAGT, then they'll pass it to me and I'll send it to you from Amazon.
Okay,
Are
let me,
we ready for our drawing?
yes. Um, oh, uh, our viewer from Malaysia said, let's connect. So hopefully she took down your
Oh, good. That would be
information.
amazing.
Yeah, so let's see. I think let's go back. I'm looking at our first commenter. Our first commenter was Angela Kaufman, and she has stuck with us through the entire presentation. And so, Angela, if you would direct message us on the Colorado Association for Gifted and Talented, just click on our link and direct message us and give us your address. We will make sure that Gail and Lynn get a copy sent out to you.
Yep, absolutely.
It'll come through Amazon, so they'll send it directly to your home. So if you would just direct message us, Angela, we will make sure you get a copy of this excellent book, because it sounds like it could be very applicable to your life. Um, so thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight and sharing some cool books that I'd never been exposed to, that I'm gonna have to check out now, because even though I don't have young children, I still love those books.
I know, I do too.
Um, and we really appreciate, we hope we see you again, maybe later this year. And we do want to remind everybody that we have on the 16th, We have Shalala Dillard. Sorry, I just like wrap my tongue around that name. She is actually on our board, and she's going to be presenting how integrating culturally holistic programming increases success for gifted BIPOC students of secondary students. So that will be a great presentation. And again, she works with us on the CAGT board, so it's going to be great to have one of our own presenting. And again, that's on April 16th. So almost Dr. Gail Bentley. One more month.
Thanks for saying that. You're giving me the energy
And-
to keep going, to persevere to the end.
Yes, and Dr. Lynn Lim, thank you for joining us tonight and sharing your hard work and giving us access to that. And Angela Kaufman has responded and says, "Yay, thank you." So I will be emailing you her address so that you
Just
can
send it to me.
send that book off.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks for
I'm going to
having
go ahead
us.
and stop the live stream.